Welcome to our deep dive into the gig economy. We're going to be looking at a ton of research, news reports, even some personal stories
Yeah,
to help you guys figure out this crazy new world of work.
it seems like everybody's talking about it these days, and
Mm,
it for good reason, right? I mean, the way people are earning a living is totally changing.
it really is. And you know what's so interesting about it? It's not just about driving for Uber or delivering food anymore.
Right.
We're talking architects, lawyers. I even saw something about neurosurgeons. Like, whoa, finding their place in this whole gig economy thing.
Yeah, that's wild. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
maybe we should step back for a second, kind of, think about how we even got to this point.
Yeah, like where did this whole thing even come from?
Well, the idea of freelancing has actually been around for like forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the term freelance itself, it goes all the way back to the 12th century,
Wow.
and it referred to these mercenary soldiers
Huh.
who would basically sell their skills.
Up to
Yeah,
highest bidder.
yeah, exactly, to whoever paid the most.
That's so interesting, though, how something, from so long ago is like back again, but it's like
Right.
supercharged by technology.
Like, yeah, a blast from the past meeting the future or something.
Totally. But I feel like there's got to be more to it, right? Like, why is this happening now? Why is everyone suddenly so into this whole gig thing?
Yeah, good point. I mean, part of it is for sure companies wanting to save money.
Right.
They're always looking for cheaper and more flexible ways to get things done.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So they turn to gig workers.
Yeah.
But it's not just the companies, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, there are millions of people actually choosing this way of life.
Right.
They're drawn to the flexibility, the freedom, the whole, be your own boss thing.
Yeah. And there are actually studies showing that a lot of these folks are way happier than they were in their old 9 to 5 jobs.
I saw that. Something like 79% of independent workers say they're happier.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's wild. And I get it. I mean, who wouldn't want to set their own hours, work from anywhere, be their own boss?
I know, it sounds pretty tempting.
Right. Even people with full-time jobs are looking for side hustles these days.
It's true, everybody's got a side hustle.
So there's definitely something to this whole, freedom and flexibility thing.
Okay, so maybe it's not all bad, but what about the downsides? Like, what about things like healthcare, retirement plans, all that stuff that you usually get with a regular job?
Yeah, that's the big question mark, right?
Yeah,
You're giving up a lot of that security when you go the gig route.
right.
So yeah, there's definitely a risk of, financial instability, especially if something unexpected happens, like an illness or an injury.
It's true, and I was reading a report the other day that said some of DoorDash drivers are only making like $1.45 an hour before tips.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. Like, how can anyone survive on that?
It's tough. A lot of these gig workers are working super long hours
Yeah,
just to make ends meet, and then they're also dealing with those crazy algorithms
the algorithms, right?
that control so much of their lives. Have you seen that documentary, The Gig Economy?
I haven't yet, but it's on my list for sure.
You should check it out. It really lays it all out.
What was the most, I don't know, eye-opening thing for you?
You know what really got me? The stress.
Yeah.
Like these workers, they're constantly worried about getting deactivated from the app. They're always feeling pressure to accept every gig.
I can only imagine.
Even if it means working, crazy hours for almost no money, it's a lot to deal with.
It sounds like those algorithms are adding a whole other layer of, well, I don't know, almost like a layer of control over these workers.
It is, yeah. It's like this invisible boss that's always watching you and judging you.
Yeah, so how do those algorithms actually work?
Basically, they're like this computer program that decides, how much you get paid, what tasks you get assigned.
So they really are controlling a lot.
They are, and it's all designed to make the platform more efficient and profitable.
Which makes sense from a business perspective.
Right.
But it seems like it could easily be exploited if there isn't enough transparency.
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
Right.
There's a huge power imbalance between these massive companies and the individual workers.
And we saw that play out with Prop 22 in California, right?
Yeah, exactly.
These gig companies spent a ton of money to avoid classifying workers as employees.
And they won.
Yeah, it's crazy how much money and power is involved in this whole thing.
It's a big deal. This is shaping the future of work.
It really is. Okay, so we've talked about the economic side of things, the power dynamics, but what about the psychological effects? Like, what does this constant hustling and uncertainty do to a person?
That's a great question, and it's something we're going to dig into in the next part of our deep dive.
Perfect, I'm ready for it. So we were talking about the psychological effects of the gig economy.
Right, right. Like, how does all this hustling and uncertainty affect people, mentally?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I imagine it could be pretty stressful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just think about it. Never knowing for sure how much you're going to earn each week, that's got to be a lot of pressure.
That's true. It's like you don't have that safety net of a regular paycheck.
Yeah, and the research actually backs that up,
Oh, really?
Gig workers report way higher levels of anxiety about money compared to like traditional workers.
I can see that.
It's like 45% versus 24%. That's a huge difference.
Wow, yeah, that's significant. But it can't just be about the money, right?
No, you're right. There's also the isolation.
The isolation, I haven't really thought about that.
Yeah, it's a big factor. Think about it. In a regular job, you've got your coworkers, you're chatting at the water cooler, grabbing lunch together.
Right, you're part of a team.
Exactly. But when you're working solo, often from home,
Yeah.
you miss out on all that.
It's true. I mean, we are social creatures.
Yeah.
We need those connections, that sense of belonging.
Absolutely. And without it, you can start to feel lonely, disconnected.
And that can make those financial stresses even worse, I bet.
Oh, for sure. Plus, it can also impact your career growth.
Really? How so?
Well, think about all the mentorship and feedback you get from colleagues and supervisors in a traditional job, right?
Yeah?
You don't always get them in the gig economy.
That's a really good point. You might be missing out on valuable learning opportunities.
Exactly. But beyond the financial worries and the isolation, there's another layer to this,
Okay.
identity.
Identity. What do you mean by that?
Well, in a traditional job, your work often becomes a big part of who you are, right?
Yeah, like you introduce yourself as a teacher, a lawyer, whatever.
Right. But in the gig economy, you're constantly switching roles, projects.
It's true. You're always wearing different hats.
So how do you even answer the question, what do you do?
That's a good question. Like, what do you say?
I've heard people say things like, I provide legal services, or I'm an educational consultant.
It's more about your skills than a specific job title.
Exactly. It's like you're always marketing yourself, your brand.
It's like you're a mini entrepreneur.
Exactly. Which can be, both exciting and scary.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, on the one hand, you have all this freedom, but on the other hand, you're kind of on your own.
Totally. You're responsible for finding your own clients, managing your own, everything.
Okay, so the gig economy is definitely shaking things up on a personal level.
For sure.
But what about the bigger picture? Like, how is all of this affecting society as a whole?
Well, one of the big concerns is inequality.
Inequality. How so?
As more and more jobs become gig-based,
Yeah.
we could see a widening gap between, the people who thrive in this new system.
And those who don't.
Exactly. It's like a digital divide.
Almost the haves and the have-nots of the gig economy.
Right. Those with the right skills and resources, they'll do great, but those who don't.
They could really struggle.
And we're already seeing this happening.
Yeah.
Remember that documentary we talked about, the gig economy?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those folks who were really struggling,
Yeah.
they were people who already faced barriers to traditional employment.
Like who?
People of color, immigrants, people without college degrees.
So it's like the gig economy could offer them opportunities,
It
but could also make things worse.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword.
It's like you need a safety net, you need a living wage, otherwise...
Otherwise, you're just stuck in this cycle of precarity.
Right, yeah, you're constantly hustling just to survive.
That's the paradox of the gig economy. It's got this huge potential.
For good and bad.
Yeah, it can empower people, but it can also exploit them.
And it feels like it's happening so fast.
It is.
Like, we need to figure this out. Like, now...
We do. We need to have these conversations, come up with solutions, advocate for better policies.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and watch this unfold.
And that's actually a perfect segue to the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, let's do it.
We're going to explore some of those solutions, some of the innovations and ideas that are out there.
I'm excited to hear about it.
I think you'll be surprised by what people are coming up with.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the downsides, all that stuff.
Right, the good, the bad, the ugly.
But now let's get to the good stuff. Like, what can we actually do to make this gig economy thing, actually work for people?
Yeah, how do we make it fair, sustainable, all that?
Exactly. So where do we even start?
Well, I think policy's got to be a big part of it, right?
Policy, yeah, like those labor laws that we talked about.
Yeah, they're just not designed for this new way of working.
Right, so what needs to change?
One idea that's getting a lot of attention is this concept of portable benefits.
Portable benefits. Okay, break that down for me.
So basically it means that things like, health care, retirement savings,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be tied to a specific employer anymore.
So it's like instead of getting your health insurance through Uber or whoever,
Right.
you'd have your own independent account that you could take with you for gig to gig.
Exactly. That way you're not, completely screwed if you lose one gig or, if a platform decides to change its policies.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having your own safety net.
Exactly. But of course, the devil's in the details, right?
Always.
It's like, how do you actually implement something like that?
Yeah, and who pays for it?
Right. Would gig workers be required to contribute? Would the government subsidize it? There are a lot of questions.
Sounds complicated.
It is. But you know what? There are actually some pilot programs already happening.
Really?
Yeah. And the early results are looking pretty promising.
Okay, so maybe there's hope.
Yeah, I think so. But policy is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right. What else?
We also need to tackle those algorithms.
Oh, yeah, the algorithms, they felt kind of like a black box.
They are. And that's a problem. There needs to be more transparency.
Transparency. Like, what do you mean by that?
Workers should know how these algorithms are making decisions.
Yeah, like how are they calculating our pay, our ratings, all that stuff?
Exactly. And some platforms are actually starting to do this.
Oh, really?
Like some ride-sharing apps now show drivers the estimated fare before they accept a ride.
Say they have more information, more control.
Right, which is a step in the right direction.
Okay, so more transparency with the algorithms, portable benefits. That's a good start.
It is, but, I think we also need a bigger shift
A bigger shift, like what?
in our mindset.
Mindset. Okay, I'm listening.
Like, we've been taught to think about work in this very traditional way.
9 to 5, climb the corporate ladder, all that.
Exactly. But the gig economy is totally different.
It's like a whole new ball game.
It is, and we need to embrace that. We need to empower people to be entrepreneurs.
Help them build their own careers, their own businesses.
Exactly. And that means providing access to training, resources, all that good stuff.
So it's like we need tools and resources that are specifically designed for the gig economy.
I think so. Like, we've got LinkedIn for the traditional job market.
Right.
What if we had something similar for freelancers, independent contractors?
That's a great idea, like a platform where you can connect with clients, find training, get support with all the back-end stuff.
Yeah, and build community, too.
Community, yeah, because that's what's often missing, right?
It is, that sense of connection, of belonging.
Because at the end of the day, it's about people, right?
It is. It's about giving people the freedom and flexibility to create their own path.
And to thrive.
Exactly. So what does all this mean for you, the listener?
Yeah, what can we actually do to make a difference?
Well, first of all, stay informed.
Right, knowledge is power.
Learn about the gig economy, its challenges, the solutions that are being proposed.
And if you're thinking about becoming a gig worker,
Do your research. Weigh the pros and cons. Make sure you understand the platform you're working with.
and if you're already a gig worker,
Don't be afraid to speak up, share your experiences, connect with other gig workers.
advocate for your rights.
Exactly, because the future of work, it's not predetermined
We get to shape it.
through our choices, through our actions.
So yeah, it's a little daunting, but also kind of exciting.
It is. It's like we're all pioneers in this new world of work.
And who knows what the future holds.
But one thing's for sure, it's going to be interesting.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the gig economy.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We hope this has given you some food for thought.
And maybe even inspired you to get involved to help shape the future of work.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.